Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time we have a lot of different cool and interesting Nintendo Switch 2 news and leaks to discuss. There's so much going on. There's a story that I'm not entirely sure I agree with regarding Ocarina of Time and when it might be coming out. There is a listing here, we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about various games that are coming to Nintendo Switch 2. We have a leak for Diablo IV. We've gotten a big update for Stellar Blade. We've learned even more about Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave. We have a pretty big deal interview that has some huge implications about the future for Pokémon, and there's also various things coming out about From Software and their titles for Switch 2, Elden Ring and the Duskbloods especially. There's so much going on with that. The network test just ended, and we learned some really cool things. So we're going to be getting into all of that today. Before diving into it all though, I'll just ask that if you find yourselves enjoying my videos, and if you haven't subscribed already, to please subscribe. So we have a Swiss retailer that is listing the Ocarina of Time remake for Nintendo Switch 2 to be coming out on December 1st. And here's the site right here. And people are probably going to be talking about this, and I'm just going to tell you, this is almost certainly incorrect. The main reason being that December 1st falls on a Tuesday, and Nintendo releases games on Thursdays. Like, if this said December 3rd, then I think this would perhaps maybe mean something, and I do think a very early December release is not out of the question for Nintendo. We've seen Nintendo put out some pretty significant releases in early December, such as Metroid Prime 4, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I've been speculating as of late that perhaps that's when we're going to be seeing the Duskbloods sometime in December, but definitely there will not be a major Nintendo title coming out on a Tuesday. They release their games on Thursdays. So this is almost certainly incorrect, and as we've been talking about for a while already, November is actually usually the time Nintendo releases big Zelda releases when they're aiming for that holiday season, which, looking at what Nintendo's announced so far, and what we know about Ocarina of Time, it being a game to come out in 2026, November is the most likely month we'll be seeing Ocarina of Time come out. So yes, don't believe this listing that it's coming out December 1st, that's highly, highly unlikely. Now, something that is a huger deal, we have this recent Game Freak interview where they said something that was a pretty big deal. As pointed out here by Central Leaks, Game Freak has confirmed in an interview that they expect the classic turn-based battle system may disappear or heavily change in future main series Pokemon games, and created Pokemon Champions to preserve the classic gameplay moving forward. Here's the clip.
でずっとやってきたバトルっていう対戦っていうもののルールだったりが、これからの、ポケットモンスターシリーズだとちょっとずつ変わっていくんじゃないかなっていうところもあって、そういう時に、今までのその対戦っていうのを、それこそこう、ね、赤緑金銀あたりから何十年も遊んでくれてる人もいる中で変わりましたっていうので、じゃあもう新しい方やってくださいっていうのも、それはそれであんまりこう良くないよなっていうのが、ずっとこうゲームフリークの中でも引っかかりがあって、新しい挑戦みたいなこともやっぱりそのシリーズの中ではしていきたいし、かといって今までのそのバトルシステムっていうのを、ないがしろにしたくもないよねっていう時に、じゃあ今までのバトルシステムっていうのを引き継いでずっと遊べるゲームを1個作るといいんじゃないかっていうところがポケモンチャンピオンズの開発のきっかけになっていたかなとは思いますね。あとは、森本さんが、バトルが大好きなのでずっと老後もバトルを。
So this is something I've talked about various times on the channel here. Because of Pokemon Champions, it's an outlet for Game Freak and Pokemon Company to still have that battle system they've been fine-tuning and tinkering with for all these years. But now that they have this, and they're acting as if they're going to be treating Pokemon Champions as a mainstay moving forward, they will continually be updating it for years to come indefinitely. This also affords them the opportunity to be more experimental with the mainline series, which I think is going to be overall good for the quality of the games. They can actually start to do different things with the combat system. We've seen them start to experiment with this stuff with the Legends games, so I'm very curious how they're going to change things up with the upcoming Pokemon Winds and Waves. It makes me more excited for what they're going to do with that, and at the same time, as someone who's been playing Pokemon since essentially the beginning, who loves the battle system, we can still enjoy that with Pokemon Champions. Moving on to an interesting leak here, we have this report from D-Labs that Diablo is coming to Switch 2, and we have a release date and even more information. So as it said here, as promised, we're back with new details on the release of Diablo IV on Switch 2. It will indeed be the Age of Hatred collection, available both physical and digital, for $69.99 USD. As a reminder, this collection includes the base game as well as the major expansions Vessel of Hatred and Lord of Hatred. As for the release date, it's finally set for September 15th, 2026. The official announcement remains unknown, but it could well coincide with the opening of pre-orders, scheduled for September 12th, according to our latest info. The date is significant as it corresponds to the opening of BlizzCon 2026, which is to be held September 12th to 13th later this year. And so Diablo 4, according to D-Labs magazine, should be coming out September 15th, and it's going to be $70 USD, and it's going to be the Age of Hatred collection. Another third-party game we got a pretty big update on is Stellar Blade. I remember playing the demo of this on PlayStation 5, I really enjoyed it. I was planning on picking up the game for my PS5, but I just didn't get around to it, and now it's coming out for Nintendo Switch 2, and it's looking pretty good. We can see, actually, that they are targeting above 30 FPS, they are aiming to hit 60, but counting the frames here, I don't think it's hitting 60 perfectly, at least not at this point, but it's still running pretty well. It looks pretty good, and perhaps by the time it comes out, it will be running even better, closer to hitting a perfect 60. We shall see. That would be amazing if so. I'll note that while they're still saying it's coming out later 2026, we do not have an exact release date, so they may be really working on optimization here and don't want to give us an exact date quite yet for that reason. This version of Stellar Blade is being touted as the Complete Edition, and it's going to include all the DLC as being said here by Genki. It's the base game with all the extra DLC included. There's going to be the Nier Automata collab, there's going to be the Nikkei collab, the deluxe edition of content, the Joy-Con 2 will have motion controls, and yes, it's still coming later in 2026, at least as of what we know now. This is a game I was actually very excited to hear that it's coming to Switch 2 because I think it's such a cool game, it's an impressive game. And to see games like this running and looking great on Switch 2 I think is exciting, and it's just suggestive of the kind of platform Switch 2 is becoming. A system that, yes, has great first-party Nintendo games, but also has various great third-party games as well. I understand a lot of people who perhaps are unaccustomed to Nintendo getting all of these big games and them running well might be a little bit hesitant to try them out on Switch 2, but I've played several so far, such as Resident Evil Requiem, and I think it's great. And when we see other games like this, Stellar Blade, aiming for a higher frame rate, it's very exciting to see. We recently heard about Call of Duty running well on Switch 2. The Duskbloods, while being published by Nintendo, is being made by From Software, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But we're just seeing so many different examples of third-party companies excelling on Switch 2. So people should stop sleeping on the console is the main point I'm trying to make here. Now, an interesting update has come out regarding Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave. We've been getting various character updates in the game, but this one in particular I think is highly worthy of note, as we see from the translation of the Japanese Fire Emblem Twitter page. Anatolia, a girl of the Shirao clan who fights to save her compatriots from her homeland. Due to her appearance, she is called the Mysterious Bride. She has a personality that could be described as cool in the best light or emotionally distant in the worst, and she sometimes unintentionally angers others without meaning to. And so as you see here, this is the character that has a gun, which is interesting because Fire Emblem is usually more so in the fantasy, medieval kind of environment aesthetic, and so having a gun is definitely different, but we do have some interesting clips here. For this next part, it says Anatolia, who runs a fortune-telling shop in the dungeon. It's well known in the neighborhood for being spot on accurate, and there's always a line every time. So she is a fortune teller. But it's this clip here that I think is the most interesting. In battle, they handle ranged attacks with the portable firearm Salamander, as well as close quarters combat using Qigong enhanced martial arts. Furthermore, they seem to wield unfamiliar magic as well. Taking a look at the footage here, we can see her holding a gun, which is quite surprising, but you see energy shots are coming out of it, which people think is really cool. I agree, but there's more to this character than just shooting a gun in Fire Emblem. They also have really cool like energy attacks within their martial arts, and also they have a really cool ranged attack that's reminding people of something like a Hadoken or a Kameha wave. So clearly you can see why a lot of people are very into this character. Moving on, we have a claim that Elden Ring is going to be running at 60 frames per second. And this is based off some people seeing the latest trailer for Elden Ring on Switch 2 on YouTube having a 60 FPS mode. But when you actually go to the trailer, as you are right here, and you use the comma and period buttons, if you do this on YouTube, you can actually go frame by frame. Updates, doesn't update, updates, doesn't update, updates, doesn't update. So just looking at these brief frames here, to me it seems more like Elden Ring is running at around 30 FPS, maybe a little bit higher, but definitely not close to 60, at least from what we're seeing so far. But that shouldn't really be the expectation, because Elden Ring doesn't even run at a rock solid 60 FPS on more powerful platforms in performance mode, and this is a giant open world game with a lot going on. For it to be looking good, and to be running at a close to stable 30 or somewhere around there, I would say is a pretty impressive thing to accomplish. So no, Elden Ring on Switch 2 is not running at 60 FPS. But still, the latest footage looks really good, the game's running really well, and it looks like a very solid version to play, especially because you'll be able to enjoy it portably. Now, the Duskbloods Network test has wrapped up, as we see here said by one of the official Duskblood pages. All sessions of the Duskbloods closed network test have concluded. Thank you to all participants. We will consider your thoughts and feedback in our ongoing development as we strive for further improvements. We look forward to the day of our next meeting in the Lands of Dusk. And I already talked about my feelings about the network test. It's fantastic. Last night I was able to win just one more match, and it was really good. I love this game. I'm hooked on it. I go into my expanded thoughts on the game in yesterday's video. I'll have that in the iCard if you want to check that out. But there are some other interesting updates here. So as we see here reported by Games Radar, in a live stream hosted by Famitsu, translated by Games Radar Plus, From Software producer Yasuhiro Kitao reveals that the number of applicants for the Switch 2 game's closed network test exceeded that for Night Rain's. We were really surprised. And this is extremely surprising, actually, because Night Rain was for various platforms: PC, PS5, PS4, Xbox Series X and S, and Xbox One, yet the Duskbloods was just for Switch 2. And let me take you back to the conversation we were having a little bit earlier in the video, talking about how we're seeing various third-party games come out for Switch 2 running well, but you still have a lot of people who are hesitant because of the history of Nintendo. But you then see situations like this, where the Duskbloods, being an exclusive for Switch 2, which many people have complained about because not everyone wants to buy a Switch 2 to play the Duskbloods, there were more people in this network test than the one for Night Rain. That says a lot. I think that speaks to the quality of the game and to just how much people are anticipating this game. I've already said glowing things about it from the network test myself. It's really good. This is a big deal game. More and more people should be paying attention to the Duskbloods. It is hype. And as we're seeing here from this report, a lot of people were very excited for that network test. But one other interesting to point out there's this recent interview with Miyazaki where it was confirmed that From Software will return to single-player games after the Duskbloods. There's been this concern because we got Night Rain and then we got the Duskbloods, two multiplayer From Software titles, and people would like to see more single-player entries. The existence of these multiplayer games do not mean there aren't also single-player From Software titles in development. Just gotta be patient. Regardless though, I am very into the Duskbloods and there's a lot going on with this, so I'm not here thinking I need to wait for the next one. I'm extremely excited for this upcoming The Duskbloods. But that's all the interesting news and leaks we have to discuss for today. What do you think? Does something in particular stand out? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.